Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jasmine Munoz, and I'm an assistant regional planner at SCAG. I largely work on Go Human efforts with the goals of reducing traffic collisions in Southern California and encouraging people to walk and bike more. And some of our efforts in Go Human include co-branding materials, kit of parts, and our Community Streets grant program, which I'll talk more a little bit in the next few slides. But if you're interested in learning more about our Go Human resources, I will put our link in the chat. But again, I'll talk more in length a little bit later. At this time, I would encourage every one of you to type your name, your preferred pronouns, and the organization, if you are with one, in the chat. And so this will let us know who's in the room and if you wanted to connect with others as well. So I can start. Putting in the chat. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining today's session, Reimagine Biking While Black, a roadmap to advocacy and joy guide prepared by Yolanda Davis-Overstreet, which I'll introduce her in a couple slides later. So we're very excited to have her present screening her Biking While Black film, as well as a beautiful presentation she laid out for us, and also a Q&A at the end. So today's agenda, we are going to do, I will be presenting a land acknowledgement, going over some session logistics, briefly going over the Go Human program, the background, overview, and funding. Next, I will introduce Yolanda and also start a screening of Biking While Black, How Safe Are Black Lives Bicycling? It'll be about a 9 minute and 30 second film, followed by a presentation by Yolanda Davis-Overstreet. And the very last section of our agenda is a Q&A with Yolanda with any questions that you have. And please let me know if I'm speaking too fast or if you need me to slow down. SCAG acknowledges that we are living, working, and recreating on Indigenous lands. SCAG's LA office is located on the land of the Chumash, Tongva, and Quiche people. We recognize that these tribes are still here, and we are committed to supporting the continuation of their stories, cultures, and communities. I am personally calling from the San Fernando Valley, which is within the ancestral lands of the Tataviam peoples. We welcome you to explore these resources provided in the chat, which I will link here for further awareness if you are interested. So the session logistics today are, we should be wrapping up around 2:30, so 1.5 hours today. This meeting is being recorded. All participant lines will be muted. And at the end, like I said, there will be a Q&A session. If you do have a question during any time during this presentation, please type it in the chat box or press the raise hand function. We will log in all questions and then voice a selection of those at the very end of the presentation. And a recording this webinar and the presentation slides will be available on the SCAG website after this is over with today. So I will go ahead and start with our Go Human program background. SCAG launched its community engagement and traffic safety program, Go Human, in 2015 to reduce traffic collisions and encourage people to walk and bike more. And on the other side of the slide is a regional traffic safety data snapshot showcasing the fatalities, which is roughly 36%, and 5% of their daily trips of people who walk and bike. So just showcasing the severity of why we want to reduce traffic collisions and encouraging people to walk and bike more for this program. May is, if no one's unaware of it, are aware of this, May is National Bike Safety Month. So this is just an invitation for folks to use our Go Human resources as a ways to boost their local bike safety efforts. And I will introduce to you the next slides of our resources. So one of those resources is called co-branded safety messaging materials, SCAG designs, co-brands, prints, and ships safety advertisements in multiple languages at no cost to partner agencies and CBOs. The print materials are available now. So if you're part of a CBO or any other partner agency, you're welcome to go to our Go Human website and look at the request form. If you're interested in any co-branded materials such as lawn signs, banners, postcards, digital media, such as Instagram, and custom requests. And so here's just a picture of something that we've done before. And as you see, there's a SCAG logo, an OTS logo, and a partner agency logo as well. Our next resource is Kit of Parts. It is a no-cost engagement tool to temporarily demonstrate safety infrastructure in your community. We have a list, a wide variety of parts that are in the kit of parts, such as a creative crosswalk, a curb extension, a parklet, median refuge island, a separated bike lane, and educational signage. So if you are interested in showcasing a way of showing your community what it may be like to have a creative crosswalk or a curb extension, if it is not there right now, you're welcome to reach out to us at GoHuman for more information and how to put this in your community and show your community what it could be like. And next, our other resource is our 2024 Community Streets Grant Program. It is a funding opportunity for community organizations to implement traffic safety and community engagement strategies. We support projects that implement community engagement and traffic safety strategies, including but not limited to messaging, education, engagement activities, leadership development, community assessment, or resource distribution. We are excited to announce our awardees very soon this summer. So our application round did end, but we will announce it soon. So stay tuned for who has been awarded in your county. And lastly, we have a Go Human Traffic Safety Pledge. Currently, 31 jurisdictions in the SCAG region have signed up. So it is just a tool to encourage local jurisdictions to create change, and people can sign on their own behalf or as part of their organizations or jurisdiction. And here is a website that will give you an abundant amount of resources on how to encourage creating change for encouraging people to bike and walk more in their area. Great. Okay. So now that I went over the Go Human background overview and funding, I will now introduce Yolanda Davis-Overstreet. And after that, we will be able to screen Biking While Black. So first, Yolanda is a community sustainability, transportation equity, and mobility justice activist who primarily focuses on pedestrian safety in communities of color. Through years of inclusive bicycling and pedestrian safety advocacy, Yolanda has connected historically disinvested communities with institutional resources to create lasting transportation and safety improvements. Yolanda's intersectional approach to addressing local issues has strengthened capacity to empower her community, form collective collaborations, and co-create projects that speak to the needs of overlooked communities and narratives. And so Yolanda will come back shortly after the screening, so you'll be able to see her. But for now, we will go into screening the 9.5-minute film. And I would like to ask audience members to please turn off their video so that there's not a lot of lag in the film. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that'd be great, but you do not have to. And with that, I will turn it over to screening the film.
I did grow up riding bikes. It was one of the things we did in our neighborhood. Having a bike as a kid was a great thing. Now, as an adult, you know, riding bikes is great because it's one of the few times where you get to really exercise, get your cardio in, especially if you do work close. Living in California, it's better to bike than to get caught in traffic and just add to the smog. I was sous chef at a restaurant down on Ventura Boulevard, and because it's so close to my house, literally like 1.7 miles, I rode my bike to work. When you work at a restaurant, you get off pretty late, 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and when I would ride my bike home, I would get stopped by the police. And the first time it happened, I wasn't really mad. I'm riding my bike up the street at midnight, so I get it. The police stopped me, they ran my information, let me go on about my business. The second time, when the same cop stopped me again and asked me the same questions, like, obviously I'm getting off work. You see me riding up the same street at the same time wearing the same chef outfit. Like, you already ran me. You know I live around the corner. Why are you continuing to stop me?
I don't ride through Beverly Hills anymore for what? You know, it's like when I was going through Beverly Hills, I would always fit the description and get pulled over and have my backpack searched, and it's like, yo, you fit the description, there was a robbery. It was like, yeah, I know the story. Black folks' movement have always been monitored and controlled within this society since we've been in this country, right? So I'm not surprised that I fit the description. You know, I'm not surprised when I get pulled over on a electric bicycle because I didn't want to answer a question from a police officer and end up in jail for the weekend and have my bike confiscated because I didn't feel like dealing with your BS, you know?
Okay, Fred, time to find our perfect apartment on Zillow. Don't worry, change will be...
Apologies.
That's okay. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, it's a few minutes and then we can just clip through improvising.
The weekend and have my bike confiscated because I didn't feel like dealing with your BS, you know?
When I was in DC riding one night, a guy tried to snatch me off of my bike. I've also been stopped by the police on my way to a doctor's appointment one morning, going towards the Crenshaw Mall. Saw the cops and I'm, doing my thing, and then I saw them put on the lights and I was confused because I'm like, what's happening? Who are they stopping? Why are they putting, I didn't see any cars advance or any wild, activity. So I definitely was taken aback. And then the cop got on the loudspeaker and, yelled at me, identified my bike, and demanded that I pull over or I would be arrested. And I'm like, what is happening? What was I doing? As a person who teaches bike safety classes, as a person who is doing all of the things technically that I'm supposed to be doing, I'm riding in the right most of the lane, I'm predictable in my ride, all of this, wearing a helmet, all of these things, So I'm stopping at the stop sign, stopping at the traffic lights. So why are you stopping me on a bike? Outside of what can I guess is that you identified this black woman on a bike that maybe you want to harass for whatever reason. It was just really, really off-putting. I was, just taken aback by the whole experience.
So the question is, how safe are Black lives really riding on bikes? And to look at these issues from a standpoint of changing the way that enforcement is handled in Los Angeles and across the country.
It's really alarming that doesn't matter what kind of mode of transportation they're using, Black people face worse safety outcomes when they're driving, when they're walking, and when they're cycling, and that's just not okay.
Every transportation planner who is working towards equity in transportation will always tell you this, that transportation in Los Angeles, probably in the United States in general, wasn't planned with Black lives in mind. You know, you see this from the way the streets were constructed. You see how freeways were built to dismantle communities of color.
Being inside a car feels safer for a lot of people because there's less exposure. And if you're part of a community that has had it made painfully aware to you that the color of your skin is gonna make you a target for unwanted attention and, you know, state violence that's just gonna play out in an instant, who am I to say that they, you know, should be out on a bicycle or waiting at the bus stop? That is a real phenomenon that we absolutely need to validate for people and take that into account with thinking about street safety.
There's a lot of things that Black people want to do that we enjoy doing, but we just don't do because we understand the dangers behind it. And that's not going to change until you take out the institutional racism. Just because there's a bike trail or a bike lane doesn't mean we're going to ride. We still have to deal with the same problems, you know?
We have a say in how we can co-create our environments to be safer for us now, but also in terms of for the future.
And we know that there's probably 100 Black cycling clubs that have popped up in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is to y'all. I know you ride your bikes, I know you love cycling, and you have the resources to do it. You're doing it. You're going to the One Love rides with your nice road bike and all that. Keep doing that. But there's gotta be a way to look at collectively that next generation that's coming up behind you. That's the key. Because we're already in our 40s and 50s, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we're doing it, and we should be doing it. We need to figure out how to get 12, 13, 14-year-olds into it, or maybe even younger.
If I were speaking to a group of Black lives about bicycling, I would be encouraged and excited to tell them about my personal experience of bicycling. It has given me strength. It has shown me nature. It has shown me camaraderie. It has shown me pretty much the human spirit, both in myself and in those around me. Bicycling has offered me an enhanced life. But I would also say, be careful. I would say, be strong. And I would say, be brave. And I would encourage you to understand that you control the bike. The bike doesn't control you. Just like life itself, you control your life, you control the bike, but that bike can take you places that you would never imagine.
And this life is all about trials and tribulations. You know, it's like, you know, things are gonna challenge you, things are gonna knock you down, and, you know, you have to find the resolve and the strength to get back up and continue through it, you know? Yeah, continue to rise and continue to ride, you know?
Yes, a round of applause. We hope everyone enjoyed it. Well, now it is finally time for me to introduce, or I already introduced Yolanda, but her video is on and she is here. And she will be able to provide a more comprehensive overview of her journey in creating 2 short film docuseries on biking while Black, as well as sharing insights from her research and findings document in the advocacy guide titled Reimagine Biking While Black, a roadmap to advocacy and joy guide. And nice to have you here, Yolanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it is amazing to see that this was our 9-minute film, which is really kind of kicked off, the birth of Biking While Black. To see this was 2021. So to see that it is still so relevant today and really speaks kind of in an encapsulated short film that we went on, and I'll talk about it in the presentation, but went on to then create a 29-minute film. So thank you all for joining us. That's had an opportunity to take time out of your day, in the middle of the day, to join us in this presentation. So I'd like to start out by, number one, just acknowledging that I too live in the sacred land of the Tongva people. And I also live in a space where I'm sitting and literally making this presentation, where I was born and grew up in an area called West Adams, which was not always called West Adams, but a historically red line community. So it really ties into this presentation. And as we go through this storytelling and really advocacy approach. So creating Biking While Black really started out as a community-driven media advocacy campaign turned movement. Next slide. But it didn't happen overnight. And excuse me as I go through, I'm actually getting over bronchitis through all the networking and pollen and what have you. It didn't happen overnight. This is an experience in advocacy work that we hear and we talk about in our community work as a lived experience, and a lived experience being, who we are as a human experience. So I started riding bikes as a very young child, and you see the picture with me and my sister. in the excuse me, in the backyard. And I continue to ride into my teen years and adult years. That then led me actually to do the age ride in the 1990s. And I would say that most definitely, being introduced to bicycling at a very young age, but then to move into my 30s and do the age ride was a very transformational point in my life in terms of the power of bicycling, just from a personal standpoint, a health standpoint, and also to literally be out in space as opposed to being in enclosed environment. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of engagement with community, and then there's just simply moving through California from San Francisco to Los Angeles. I came back and some years later became a parent, not because of the age ride, but I became a parent, and that led me into really wanting my the safety of my children in terms of when they did enter elementary school. But also I had connected kind of this experience of riding and moving through space now with safety of being a parent, becoming maybe a little bit more responsible, but also my love of bicycling, that why couldn't I simply step outside my doors and ride the bike and continue to ride the bike? And so this is a barrier for many of us that live in historically red line communities or disenfranchised communities, that it's easier said than done. And so really I connected, this is where I began to connect the dots in terms of, well, I want to ride, but my community is a disenfranchised community, that it's unsafe to literally ride my bike. In some cases, the sidewalks are crumbling. And that's really where my advocacy work, doing community service work, started, both in terms of my community overall, as well as around my children's elementary and middle schools. Next slide, please. Through this community service work, it led me into finding out more about organizations that were doing work around safe routes to school, around creating safer spaces, pedestrian spaces. And then that's when I stumbled upon SCAG and learned about the opportunities of their community mini grants and went after a grant, did the application. In fact, did several applications, and I was awarded a mini grant to do the short film Biking While Black that you just saw in 2021. And from there, we, in each of these projects that I'll talk about, it started in the summer, roughly around May or June, but it didn't end in September for me. It was a launching pad in September to continue the campaign, continue the education. And so really, I kind of, I guess you can say, I just transitioned back into doing community service work. This was too important to me. I was obviously compassionate about this work, and it couldn't stop just because the deliverables were due on September 1st. And so Biking While Black, which we'll get into a little bit more detail in terms of how we actually continue to do the work, continued after September until May of 2022, where I then created another application because people wanted to know more. They wanted to learn more about what Black advocates and bicyclists were doing and kind of the role they can play to get their narratives told, but also to get more Black and brown lives out on bikes, as well as to focus and be able to tell the stories of the fatalities that were occurring, of the injustices that were occurring, because we have far too little platforms that are having these direct, intentional conversations. So in 2022, we created the 29-minute film, and that went on basically to launch more activity, more conversations and screenings. And then in 2023, I went after another grant. And in this case, we were taking a lot of the information that we had gathered, a lot of the community engagement that was stirring up, and created a guide so that once people saw the films, they kind of wanted to know, well, what do we do next? So the guide's role, the 52-page document that focuses on justice and joy, is intentionally designed to have kind of a companion piece to carry with you as an advocate, as a planner, as a city leader, to be able to connect with the advocates directly. We have their emails or their websites within this book. Also, we tap into some of the issues that our legislative and policymakers are talking about. So we have legislative information. And this legislative information is not your general legislative information. This directly affects and speaks to communities of color and the impact that unsafe streets and disenfranchisement have placed upon us. Next slide. And to dive a little deeper into understanding the film that you just saw, our approach, or our goal of this project was to create this 9-minute short film that's centered on the conversations of mobility justice in communities of color. And so again, we hear at a lot of our meetings, a lot of our advocacy work that let's get everyone out on bikes. Let's not spend as much time in cars. And so the question being, when I did this film, was, but really, how safe are Black lives bicycling for the fact that our communities are disenfranchised? So this is what led into the launching of this film. Next slide. The two key questions that led to this documentary narrative were, what are the safety issues that Black lives face while bicycling? And what are the envisioned and justice-based solutions that are addressing these issues? So when we went out in the field, this is, and you'll see from some of the advocates that spoke in this film, and you will see, if you haven't already, the 29-minute, that we both tackle where those issues are, where those injustices exist, but also who are the people that are literally working on solution-based, conscientious solutions that are less talked about. Next slide. What we also did is and you'll see this in the film and as we continue in this presentation, is that we paired the less heard narratives with the less gathered data. And I know I see Analia is here with us. Thank you for joining us. I was introduced to the policy brief that was published back in 2020, if I'm correct. And the policy brief was titled "The Need to Prioritize Black Lives in Los Angeles Traffic Safety Efforts." And basically, this was authored by Madeline Brosen and Analia Ekman, and who basically are with the Policy Center at UCLA. And this really is what connected the dots with the narrative sharing with actual fact-based data in the storytelling that we do that has proved to be very effective. What was stated in this brief is that it is imperative that Black lives are prioritized in Los Angeles when it comes to traffic and community safety efforts. Next slide. In this policy brief, basically, and I literally, as I'm working on this project, I too am learning in this project. So you never kind of go into restorative work knowing everything. You never go into justice work knowing everything. And if you do know everything, then that means you're not digging deep enough. So it was a really amazing and kind of prolific learning process for me, and working with Madeline and learning more of the demographics and the data-driven information that the Black population in Los Angeles is only 8%. And this information was gathered between 2013 and 2017. That in itself shocked me, because being raised and born and raised in Los Angeles, I know that our population was much larger years ago, just kind of growing up and driving and moving around in Los Angeles. So to see that as of 2013, our population had dropped to 8% really surprised me. And out of that 8%, basically the victims of Black lives is overrepresented, being 14% of the fatalities that are happening in the city of Los Angeles. So this does not account for the county of Los Angeles, which I know this is information and data that's being gathered now. So in this policy brief, it states that traffic violence is one of the leading causes of unintentional injury death in the United States, and the people of color are overrepresented victims of traffic violence. And so this is just as relates to America as a whole. Black victims are overrepresented in traffic traffic coalitions in Los Angeles by 14%. Next slide. It also states in this policy brief that Black people face a higher likelihood to be victims of a traffic collision. And the worst crashes involving Black people are more likely to result in death. These are things that, while I know I knew when I created this film that our communities were disenfranchised, that our streets were unsafe, but I actually didn't know the extremity of these really fatalities. I would have thought maybe more accidents, not as many people actually dying. Black collision victims are most likely to have been killed and least likely to survive with no injuries than victims from other racial groups. And again, if I were speaking on this from a assumption note or from a emotional note, many people would have told me on this project that I am incorrect. But by having data to support the work that we're doing, it really does solidify the message. And it also really solidifies growing our campaign to change our communities for the better. Next slide. Our goals in doing this project were that we wanted to create community awareness around Black lives and mobility. And so we wanted to use this short film to build awareness on the safety concerns and mobility justice issues in LA and beyond. As you know, this is just not an LA issue. It really is happening across the country. We also wanted to highlight the mobility justice issues by sharing the less heard counter narratives about infrastructure issues, as well as how racism continues to impact Black lives bicycling, walking, and using public transit. And thirdly, we wanted to generate more intentional community-driven engagement. I would say that this is really just a highlight in the work that we've been doing over the past 3 years. It's almost kind of a magical experience that we actually move in these spaces, and together we, and when I say we, community-based organizations, constituents within those communities that attend these events, that we literally began to have dialogue about reimagining our space, working for all of us. And so in launching this first short film on YouTube in September of 2021, we continue to promote, as I mentioned before, and post insight and calls to actions on social media from September of when the deliverable was due until May of 2022. By increasing this awareness, igniting more purpose-driven narrative sharing, and building our social media coverage, we began to create momentum and support for our advocacy work. Next slide. And as you probably have gathered, the impact of that this film made and our continued community service after September is that the community stakeholders wanted to know more. They wanted to know more about the folks that we featured in the film. They wanted to know more about the policy brief that Madeline spoke about. People actually continued to share their testimonies about situations that happened to them while crossing a street, while biking, while walking, while driving. And literally, I felt like I needed to have a camera crew that was going, pretty much follow me so that I could capture the testimonies that continue to flow in person. Also, by comparing the community counter narratives with the current intentional academic data, it meaningfully helped the public and the city leaders make the connection between equity and justice-based importance of these issues. And I really just want to highlight that even more, being able to bring data into kind of this academic data and well-intended academic data into this storytelling and this platform really kind of opens up a whole nother conversation about how to trust data and how to use data and how to work with our academic leaders on this journey. It also made the justice and policy-based work, like I said, more relatable. And then after 12 months, the short documentary had pretty much gained $25,000 followers and viewers. And that's why we have the ads and commercials that pop up when you look at the 9 Minute Now. We have been invited to submit this particular film to film festivals. We won the best bicycle film at the Better Cities Film Festival in 2021. And after that, we continue to be invited to submit to more festivals. In all cases, the feedback from each platform was that folks wanted to see more and hear more, as they even do today in 2024. They want to learn more. They want to figure out ways that we can activate more change. And so we kept growing our advocacy work. Next slide. The 29-minute film, which we were awarded our next grant, Biking While Black, continuing to ride through decriminalization, disenfranchisement, and gentrification. This basically is not just a title that I just pulled from the air. This literally is a title of a lived experience. I live in a community where decriminalization occurs. I live in a community where disenfranchised is a historical reality. and I live in a community that is radically and I take the word radically back. I would say it is vastly being gentrified in ways that are almost at times incomprehensible. So this film, we've expanded upon the first film because of the demand by the public, and incorporating more narratives and digging deeper into solution-based storytelling. Next slide. This short film features actions being taken by leading Black bicyclists and BIPOC community-based organizations who are paving new roads. And I pause to say that this film would not be the success it is if not by including the narratives of people doing the work on the ground. It's just that we needed a platform to tell our stories. You know, I was the person that was able to bring these people together on a platform by being awarded this community grant, but it's them and me that are doing this work collectively. We sought narratives and approaches that tackled the deeply ingrained realities of Black movement, AKA mobility in Los Angeles and America. Next slide. And by doing that, the diverse narratives we assembled illuminated the extensive disenfranchisement circumstances. This film provided an essential highlights into the ongoing issues of racial profiling by police enforcement, particularly highlighting its disproportionate impact on Black individuals during bicycle-related encounters. Our work underscores the significance of addressing mobility justice issues and highlighting their comparable danger and trauma to navigating alongside speeding motorists. Next slide. The goal of this film, pretty close to just kind of taking a leap forward, was that we would focus on storytelling efforts, emphasizing in this case, the critical necessity for equitable investing in low-income communities of color, education, infrastructure, and resources. And that we highlight the mobility justice issues by aiming to highlight the unjust enforcement practices that continue to burden, traumatize, and even kill Black lives during police stops. And through that, we generated more intentional community-driven engagement by expanding our media platform, creating a website, in this case, which was after the deliverables were due, so that's after September. We created a website to inform the public about our advocacy efforts and events. It doesn't stop when the deliverable is due. It shouldn't stop. This is important information. This is crucial information that aims to save lives. And after the deliverables were turned in, we launched in September into screening and engagement campaign. We felt by this process, by increasing awareness, igniting more purpose-driven narrative sharing, and building our social media coverage, we began to create momentum and support, again, even more support for our advocacy work. Next slide. The impact is that the people have spoken, and they recognize that we were listening. So we began the process of building trust in ways that would not only activate our community to want to know how to become advocates, but also we began to build the trust and the recognition to get funding and do more of this work. There has been a vital interest to view the documentary and take in the less heard narratives and discuss where we can go from here. It really started in 2021, but if we launch into the 29-minute, it continues today. From 2022, when we launched the film, we're still showing this 29-minute film. And it really just is a testament to needing so much more of this work. It also, from our platform and our perspective, it strengthened our collaboration with institutions such as UCLA Lewis Center for Regional Policy Studies, as well as California Bicycle Coalition, where I sit on the board at this time. It strengthened our allyship with government agencies and city council leaders. Also, this film was selected to screen at a range of film festivals across the country and community-based events. I was not even able to attend half of the film festivals that were shown across the country, which again speaks to we are in a way leading this conversation thanks to SCAG and Go Human, and that really the work that we are doing is a model for the work that we still need so much more of. We've hosted over 20 in-person screenings over the past 2 years. That's not including 2024. And over the past 2 years, through a combination of online and in-person screenings, we have successfully engaged with over 50,000 people. We have demonstrated leadership through our restorative utilization of the arts, of data, of storytelling, and how to reimagine advocating for mobility justice and joy. Next slide. Again, just wanted to share that this is something after September 1st when we turned into deliverables. As I mentioned, we developed a Facebook, Instagram page. We developed specific media platforms so that we can continue to share the story, so that we continue to find ways that we can collaborate and to really show the public, the importance and that there is a place for this type of work. We created an email outreach campaign, a website that really works to inform people about our film, but also to invite them to upcoming events in terms of collaborative work that we are doing with other bike organizations like People for Mobility Justice, Ride On, Bike Co-op, Bike Culver City, Ciclavia. We have print material. This is literally another project. And again, a lot of this was made possible by having volunteers that have come on board to help us over these past 3 years. Next slide. Year 3, went after another community grant, and in this case, it is more of a community hub type of grant. I don't believe this one was termed a mini grant. And we were selected to create the guide that I spoke of at the beginning of this presentation, which is now to have a companion piece, a piece where the viewer, the user, the biker, the advocate, the planner can really have by their side and learn more about the work that we're doing at Biking While Black, but as well as the work that's being done by Black advocates, by Brown advocates, and ways that we can connect the dots so that we're not kind of existing in this silo type of environment that we tend to corporate in many ways tends to operate. So this very project and these very projects are reimagining how we make our streets safer for everyone. And of course, the overlooked population of Black and Brown lives. So Reimagine While Black, a roadmap to justice and joy, spotlights the personal stories in even more detail around mobility justice. And it also provides a frontline view of the tireless efforts to center justice and joy in all that we do. It is a testament to the strength of community, the power of storytelling, and the impact of collective action. Next slide. I would say that this is really where transformation took place in the work that we're doing, while the film itself and that approach is definitely transformative, because there aren't many films out like Biking While Black and connected with SCAG and the work that SCAG is doing, along with pairing with UCLA. This design work, which I will share on the sidebar, is my background. Actually, is I went to Otis Parsons College of Art and Design way back. and received my BS in communication design. So now this is kind of my message out to all of you that are attending, is for you to really look at, your skill sets, your talents, your compassion, because at this point, I believe that this guide really intersected basically my skill sets, my decades ago training in graphic design, as well as my most current going back to graduate school and getting a master's in urban sustainability at Antioch University in Culver City. Literally, I believe this guide really pulls together my skill sets, my talent, my compassions, my creative background as an awakened mobility justice leader. And that's what you will see is occurring here. So I really emphasize that each of you look at what those areas are in your life when you pulling and you're working on this work, when you're pulling together really all that you have and making it work, very intentional in making our environment more just and joy infused. So this particular guide is revolutionized the entire methodology of crafting graphic design treatment by decolonizing the very guide. The team undertook a comprehensive effort to decolonize the design process by incorporating extensive historical research, analysis of music. The music, actually, we use music in the background, the messaging of some of our great musicians, African-American musicians, jazz musicians, as the design process took place, and even their messaging. So it was an entire environmental experience in developing this material, and contemporary examination of graphic communication trends in society. And this endeavor resulted in decolonizing the very message. 2, the adoption of modeling the graphic techniques inspired by W.E. Du Bois. So this particular graph that is in the guide is a representation of the way that W.E. Du Bois was analyzing and observing the societal structure of injustice. And so we took on his way of portraying that reality. And also, I want to just give a shout out to Otis, my alumni, Otis College of Art and Design. We had a team of young students that operate and work in a structure called Design Lab within Otis. And so we had 4 students that work with us on this project, and all of that information is in our guide. And so we met weekly to design this guide, to talk about the layout, to talk about the history, along with the data that we gathered, which was all original data that my team and I developed in terms of a survey, an outreach survey, to get feedback from BIPOC lives about their experience of being bicyclists, of being advocates, of being community-based ran organizations. So we decolonized the very survey. And so all of this information is within this guide in terms of the feedback that we received. Next slide. And I see I only have 7 minutes, so I'm going to move along a little quicker. And so basically, by revolutionizing the entire process of developing this guide, we also deliberately selected fonts that were designed by an African-American font designer, intentional color themes that we pulled, influenced by, again, W.E. Du Bois, and developing a template of colors that we would use throughout this design. And also tapping into the holistic graphic design treatment in terms of the flow historically, but also just current day of those colors that inspire hope, that inspire a calmness and a place of peace and safety. Next slide. And as I spoke on early in this book, we went back to Madeline and asked her, hey, have things improved as far as traffic violence for Black lives as it related to the policy brief that you shared with us. And so basically the approach here was that we continue to strategically align with our educational and community-based efforts and allies in terms of the gathering of equitable and lived experience data to speak to the less discussed and combated mobility justice issues. And so this was a special basically section that Madeline had given us to pull this information together so that we could share it in this guide, which at that time, 2023, was not available or featured in any other publication. Next slide. Through this conversation of Madeline sharing the information with us and this update, to her dismay, the situation of Black lives continued to be lost in Los Angeles traffic violence. And this was data now that was taken from 2018 to 2022. And the fatalities had increased to 21% versus 14%. Next slide. Also in this guide, we highlight some of the most amazing community advocates that inspire me, and that is what gets me up to do the work that I do, and probably also is what motivates me to do that community service that happens after September, because I am in such awe by the advocates that are doing the work, the groundwork here in Los Angeles, and I am just overjoyed, and this is part of where the joy comes in, that I'm literally in Los Angeles where this work is being done, and that we, in fact, are models in many ways, all of us, for tackling these traffic violence and sustainability issues. Next slide. This is Pastor Pat, by the way, if I didn't say her name. Next slide. This is another narrative share, Dejan Kinsey, which you saw. We had a moment of silence for him at the end of the film. He was the young man in his late 20s that was shot 15 times in the back in South Los Angeles, in Westmont in particular, the county of Los Angeles. He was writing whatever his history was, and we can be real about having this conversation. You know, some of us, life is really tough, and some of us we don't have this journey that we have to go down. But Dejan was riding on his bike on the wrong side of the street. How many of us have done that in our lifetime? But Dejan was singled out by the police because it is highly patrolled area anyway, and police racially profiled him. They might have known him from some of his past challenges. But the point is that they pulled him over because he was riding on the wrong side of the street. And he could not take it anymore. He did not want to be harassed. So he ran. And Dejan is no longer with us because he was shot 15 times in the back. Next slide. Again, these are samples of surveys that we have created in this booklet. These are all original, culturally sensitive surveys that were specifically created and designed for an outreach to gain insight into the experiences of Black and Brown lives and BIPOC lives experiencing and bicycling and pedestrian safety work. Next slide. We also have instructional information around police harassment. And this was a very intense and intentional project where we work with Lena Williams at People for Mobility Justice and the designers at Otis to create a guide to help Black and Brown lives navigate the injustices around police enforcement and as it pertains to racially profiling. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, and this ties into the work that Madeline at UCLA and Analia and Tamika Butler are doing. How can we better reimagine policy and legislation working in our favor? how can we trust the work that's being done, and how can we connect this with the mobility justice, community sustainability, and joy-based work moving forward. And so that's what this guide intends to do. It is the first time that we have created a guide such as this. It's a lot of information, and in terms of the digestibility of it all, we are looking at ways that we can now take this wealth of information and even move it to the next step of making it maybe a bit more digestible for your everyday folk. So it was strategically develop a listing of the urgent initiatives and policy perspectives and legislation design to enhance equity and justice on the very streets that we live. Next slide. Of course, we had to include at the intersection, there's so much that happens as we move from one block to the next block. And so we also include other useful highlighted information that we have as recommended reading, if you will, homework, that we can continue to build upon. Next slide. And I would just like to say our next step is that we urge you to join us in raising awareness and advocating for safer, more equitable streets that are walkable, bikeable, particularly for BIPOC communities that have been neglected and disenfranchised for decades. And so our example and the continued example of that kind of an aha moment is that we don't really think about Harriet Tubman being kind of a mobility justice activist and leader, where she was. She used the moon, she used the lakes, she used nature to guide her from one point to the next. And mobility justice was much different back in her time in terms of life-threatening as it related to slavery, which is really kind of some of the situations do appear to be similar on our streets today. We also reflect on Victor Green, who created the Green Book. And he used the in terms of the automobile to be able to, again, to have safety from getting to one point to another, and the story and how that connects to our mobility justice issues and challenges even today. And also Nicole Hannah-Jones is someone that really stands out in terms of the work in her book 1619. She does tap into having a conversation around transportation in Atlanta, was her focus. And then, of course, Major Taylor, who was more of the recreationalist, competitive cyclist. But again, for him to even compete on riding a bike, I'm sure that many of us that have been bike riders at one time or another have been in competitive races in terms of bicycling or any other type of outdoor activity, and basically the racial harassment and life-threatening situations that occur in those times. Next slide. And lastly, please do visit us on our website. That is bikingwhileblack.com. You can literally download a free copy of our guide. Basically, the BWB guide is what you would select, and then you simply fill out the information. And just so you know, this picture in the background is one of our engagement events that happened after September 1st in our community service work at the Ciclavia. Next slide. These are our call to actions and concluding my presentation. As I mentioned, California Bicycle Coalition has amazing work that they're doing in the area of legislation. And I would highly recommend that you go to their website, sign the petitions that deal with invest and divesting in our important needs around equity, mobility justice, as well as just transportation as a whole, where the funding is needed, not in the freeways, but basically in our community, our complete streets issues. And so I'm still doing a lot of learning. I consider them my ally. I consider them my teacher in terms of a lot of the legislative work that they're doing there. Please also join our mailing list, which is on our website, so that you can stay up to date on the work that we're doing. We are looking for volunteers to help out from time to time as we grow. And lastly, but not least, please donate if you are able to support our outreach and advocacy effort. Your gift will help start important conversations about mobility justice and community safety and lifting up Black voices in this process. And I thank you again. for making the time.
Thank you, Yolanda, so much. I'm sure we all very appreciate. It's a beautiful presentation that you laid out for us.
Thank you.
So now it is time for the Q&A session. I'm very excited to hear a lot of people's thoughts here. We have a wide variety of people in the chat, from SCAG to people who are not affiliated with any organizations, others from different cities and jurisdictions. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box, and I'll ask Bryce, who is also working at SCAG, to help me facilitate the Q&A portion.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. And yes, thank you for your presentation, Yolanda. Our first question comes from Courtney Schoenwald from Los Angeles City Planning, and they ask, where can I screen the 29-minute film?
Okay, great question. You can reach out to us. It's on a person-to-person, communication. We do have a page on our website where if you want to get more information, you can go there and share information, and that will come directly to us, or you can just reach out to bikingwhileblackfilm@gmail.com and let us know what you're interested in, and we'll take it from there.
Oh, yes, I see. Tom, you may have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you for the great presentation, Yolanda, and I really enjoy watching that. And it was really inspiring to see the film. And as I mentioned before, this is the second time that I saw this film. And so my question for you is, regarding to traffic safety and equity, there's a lot of at the national level to the local level, there has been a lot of focus on transportation safety, particularly in the high injury network and Vision Zero. So I wonder, how do you see your work would be integrated into that section of the transportation safety analysis and planning?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom, for that question. I think that the work is, it's not going to happen overnight, but really it is tapping into communities and neighborhoods, neighborhood by neighborhood. And so we've got education, really is, I believe, where our work falls. And it is a tool that can be used to both introduce a reality in a condensed manner where folks are like, I had no idea this was even existing in our community. I think we are so bombarded with, life and trying to keep our lights on and going to work, taking care of your families, and then trying to have a little entertainment. The transportation in some cases is some of the last things that one of the last things that your everyday person wants to have a conversation. So we have to really kind of break that down into community-based events where we're able to first talk about what is that community constituents experience about the space around them. And so we have to be able to listen first in order to then introduce a lot of our work about, did you know that X amount of lives are being lost on the corridor right down the street from you? In most cases, they're going to say no. And I will say that I'll tell the story of the Adams Boulevard corridor that I worked on here in Los Angeles, because I lived in this community, I was born in this community. Adams had always been disenfranchised. So when I became an advocate years later, I was able to speak to the community about, this is not a gentrification project. I think that's the other thing. In our disenfranchised communities and our communities of color, a lot of times when we improve the streets, the neighbors think that this is for gentrification. that it's connected to the big building that's going up down the street, and that it's actually not for them. So we really have to get rid of kind of the myths and work, and that takes time, and that takes relationship building, and it also takes collaborative work. And I've been blessed to be able to do this collaborative work where I bring in folks from LA Dot, in some cases from the mayor's office or from our city council or our neighborhood council, and find ways to get them involved, because I think that's one of the biggest issues is trust, and that someone from the outside is coming in and telling you what to do with your neighborhood. And so basically we need to have people within the neighborhood be able to have these conversations with the vast community members. And that, I would say, is probably one of the most effective tools and work that I've done here in LA. And I'm able to then talk about that when I go to places like Sacramento or Minnesota. When I show this film, I talk about how that lived experience so that they can pretty much replicate this type of activity and make sure that they get people that live in the community that begin to have these conversations to reimagine what transportation should look like. But I think also to add, lastly, the conversation about climate crisis. We've never really had that conversation. So we have to be very creative and intentional about how we can pull that conversation into the work that we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Tom, and for that wonderful answer, Yolanda.
Thank you.
And we have our next question from Carrie DeStefano, who asks, do you think your efforts have helped make local officials make infrastructure upgrades that could make cycling safer?
I'm sorry, say that first part again.
Yes, it's do you think your efforts have helped make local officials make infrastructure upgrades that could make cycling safer? So
Okay, I
specific
got it.
to cycling infrastructure, yeah.
I would say in my community and in my little corner of the world, yes. I live next to a deputy director of our city council here in Council District 10. So another story, because they're real, it's like sometimes this kind of high-end, over-strategized, overthought, and not lived experience is so off base. Look at where you live and the people that you work with and how that then potentially is connected or can be connected to your city officials, and that we'll find ways that we can more humanly have conversations about our spaces and share your story about why you're interested in doing what you're doing and how kind of your journey, if you will, if you can just get 20 minutes of their time. And so basically these are some of the approaches that I took. Even having a neighbor that works for the city council, he still really didn't know my story and my connection around bicycling, around walking and what have you. So during COVID, and it's unfortunate that we have to have these challenging times, but we really need to use those challenges and build on them to see how we can create opportunities. And so we sat in front of his house right next door in our patio chairs, and I printed out loads of paper, maybe like 20 sheets, about different activities that were happening throughout LA. And I basically shared with him, why do you think Ride On Co-op was created? Why do you think Crenshaw Walks was created? Did you know about the Green Book? I was bringing up really these movements and activities of the importance of walking and biking, and how West Adams, in this case, was a part of that story in terms of connecting the dots, and so it clicked with him because I spoke on things that mattered in his life that he can connect with and understand. And basically he took these storytelling and these stories of other advocates doing this work for our wellness and for our safety, he took that back to the council district's office. It wasn't just data, it was talking about literally human lives and courage and inspiring work that people were doing. And he pretty much shared that with his staff. And that's when we were given the green light to do and make the bike lanes and move forward on the bike lanes on West Adams Boulevard.
Thank you very much for your question, Carrie, and also for that another wonderful answer from you. Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Checking the Q&A box and checking for any raised hands, and also checking the chat. I do not see any further questions at this time, but if anyone has any more questions, feel free to use any three of those methods to reach out to us. And if not, I'll turn it back over to Jasmine.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bryce, for helping. If there's anyone interested in asking a question via those channels, we'd be happy to help you.
And Jasmine, can I just share actually one other kind of tidbit?
Oh yeah, sure.
In terms of the power of film, the power of storytelling, it really is a connecting tool that pulls together people, both your community constituent, the planners, engineers. I mean, this has been my experience, all the way to being able to be awarded by SCAG, to do this work. But at a film showing with the Pan-African Film Festival, and Councilwoman Heather Hutt was actually our moderator in this case. She had not seen the film. We asked her if she would be interested in being the moderator. And it was after seeing this 29-minute film that she had agreed to moderate the panel after that she became one of our strongest advocates. It was in that 29 minutes that she saw traffic, bicycling, violence and traffic issues, violence that she had never could conceive, that happened. And it brought her back to remembering several of her family members, basically, that experienced this traffic violence. So after that film, which was 2 years ago, Heather went back to her office. She is the chair of the City of Los Angeles Transportation Committee. She has created 2 or 3 motions around infrastructure and bicycling and pedestrian safety that go all the way from changing the way DMV handles bicycling education and safety to recognizing that we need to make sure that our streets addressing our disenfranchised communities that affect Black and brown lives. So I would say that is just another pivotal situation where film and data and the movement and the work that we're doing has impacted Los Angeles in beneficial ways.
Thank you very much, Yolanda, for answering that question, or for her providing that extra information as well. And it looks like we have one more question from Naya Overstreet, who asks, what are the main focus of Biking While Black educational programs towards highlighting safety and activism?
Okay, thank you for that question. I would say the main focus is that that's a really good question, because we do have to, at some point, because Biking While Black kind of took off and created wings of its own, that I would say I see where our work is really benefiting our community and our city and our country, is from an educational standpoint, the way that we utilize media, as I mentioned before, the way that we're able to bring in the creative approach with the arts, with the messaging, with the use of film and the use of print material and even social media. So I would say kind of our niche that where we seem to be going is educating through communication skills. And it's interesting because that's what I actually went to undergraduate school decades ago in design, was communication design. So pair communication design in an intentional way with kind of this urban sustainability in terms of radical social and environmental and mobility justice work. And basically, that's what we're doing from an educational standpoint. And then we can incorporate this in our live events where we have bike rides, where we're connecting the dots, and also community collaboration. So it's kind of a new baby, if you will, that's learning how to walk. And it's definitely, it's already walking. It's kind of taking wings of its own. But we want to make sure strategically that this work is really tapping into making a difference in our community for Black and Brown lives, and that we can sit at the table with our broader based pedestrian safety and transportation organizations and contribute to make our city a safer place to bike, walk, use public transit, and even drive.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Yolanda. And thank you,
Thank
Nia, for that
you.
question. Of course. And then it looks like, okay, we have another question in the Q&A box. And an anonymous participant asks, can you tell us more about the national response to this film? It sounds like communities nationwide have reached out to you and you have visited.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you for that question. Again, we've tapped into a nerve, a good one, a reimagining nerve. And so it seems that the work that we're doing is acting as a conduit to not only bring this film and offer this film as a tool, but it really is igniting and bringing people together to have the conversation about how we look at transportation, how we look at where are those missing gaps, and why don't, and kind of that aha of, maybe that is why we don't see as many Black and Brown lives riding for their various reasons. While Brown lives in particular, which is another conversation, are on bikes more because that is their main form of transportation. The fatalities are still there. It's just that the population is much larger. So Black and Brown lives are in danger as a whole. And so this is an issue across the country. And so I believe that when I've gone to Minneapolis and Minnesota, and I think are the two main locations that I've gone out of California, it is amazing how community has come together to try to figure out how they too can work on their mobility justice issues, and also to develop programs that don't even exist. So I think we are much ahead of a lot of states, and the work that we're doing as role models is very much needed in the US. And I believe also just with the way that I work with people and I bring my daughter along with me, we're not there. Our agenda is to inform, is to connect, is to uplift, so that they can pretty much through the model of SCAG and Biking While Black be able to make the same activity happen, in their neighborhoods and cities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Yolanda. And I've also been told that it's been screened internationally as well, which is
Yes, it has.
really,
It's
really
been
exciting.
shown in London and Poland, I think are the two locations today. There might be some other locations. Like I said, I haven't been able to get to all of the locations. And so I will have to look at my guide to see all the locations that were shown.
Fantastic. Oh, and then it looks like we have another question from our very own Jasmine, who asks, are there films that you know of that show the joy of biking as a Black, brown person?
Yes, I do. There are films out that show, I can think of one in particular that shows joy and stamina, but doesn't really tap into the justice issues. And right offhand, I don't know the name, but I can share that with you. I believe it's called Black Foxes. And they're a group of young bicyclists that are really hardcore, like mountain bikers and road racers, which is kind of in an area that I came from in my background as well, riding on a road bike. So it is very uplifting in their message. And we, again, it's a very valuable message to put out there that we can do this and we can ride and the benefits that it offers.
Awesome. Thank you,
And,
Yolanda.
and if I can also share, so another wonderful film for the first time called Spokespeople. And we had a double feature the other night at the LA Eco Village with Recyclos and Mixed Race and Chef Lunez. And the director of that film is Ryan McKeanian, and just an amazing film. And what we had in common, where it overlapped, it was we were literally telling some of the same stories. And Ryan created this film a couple years before mine. And the common link is the speaking about Woon, who that is the nickname that they called this Black cyclist that was killed, a hit and run on Normandy and Manchester. And that was really where we overlap to tell the story. So I think we must tell the justice stories with joy in order to make more effective justice-based change around bicycling and creating safer spaces and communities of color.
Yeah, thank you for that point of integrating justice and joy in films. And I'll definitely be checking those films out. Thank you.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, well, Jennifer, if you can please show the last slide of my presentation, which for all the audience members today, thank you for showing up and asking your amazing questions to Yolanda. If you can please tell us how we did today. If you can, please take out your phones if possible to take a quick 2-minute survey and scan the QR code here to help us improve our future Toolbox Tuesdays so we can have more of these and make it a better experience for all of you. And while that is going on, I'd like to thank everyone at the SCAG team and audience members that were here today, taking a 1 hour and a half of your hours of your time today in the afternoon, like Yolanda said earlier. And of course, thanking Yolanda for that wonderful screening and presentation. A lot of hard work, of course, that went into it. And
Thank you.
Rest of your day, everyone.
It's been great. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jasmine. SCAG team.
Thank you.